You and I first told Trump with Sheriff Arpaio when he got the secret NSA documents from federal whistleblowers in the DEA who had access to it, that Trump was under surveillance during the 2016 campaign and ongoing. And remember, we were attacked on CNN, the New York Times, and more. So we dug those clips out as well. So, Roger, it's not just that we're reporting on this. You and I have lived this. You are listed in the 24 names in the original NSA targeting database by Obama. And then Bongino released more last year he got from insiders where you and I were also targeted. So when we point that out, it's not so, hey, look, we're in the story. No, we've lived it. And then we saw the persecution, not just against Trump, but against you, General Flynn, myself, and others by being on that list. Obama wasn't just spying and trying to steal elections and putting out false intelligence to say we were Russian agents. He was trying to put us all in prison. Roger Stone, responding to the current bombshell developments, and from your sources, what's coming next?
Well, Alex, you're absolutely right. I'm sure you remember when our mutual friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano, correctly said that the British intelligence agency had been asked by U.S. authorities to spy on Donald Trump and his associates. He was excoriated in the mainstream media, but that has now been proven. We know that CIA Director John Brennan went to the so-called Five Eyes intelligence issues, the English-speaking nations, and gave them a list of 26 Trump friends and associates, including yours truly, and had us surveilled, giving the CIA plausible deniability. I've spent several days now, a lot of time over in the West Wing. I must tell you, Alex, there's a lot of Infowars fans over there. I had one extremely attractive White House secretary ask me whether Owen Schroyer is single. And I said, yeah, I believe he is. She said, well, could you please pass my phone number on to him? And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. You've got a lot of friends over there, a lot of admirers, Alex, a lot of watchers of Infowars. I couldn't be prouder of Tulsi Gabbard. As you know, she was a four-term Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii. She valiantly exposed Kamala Harris as a fraud, pointing out that Kamala Harris is a prosecutor, put tens of thousands of African Americans and other minorities and poor people in jail under the 1994 crime bill that was written by Joe Biden and signed by Bill Clinton into law that criminalized with harsh mandatory penalties the possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use, weaponizing that law against millions of poor people. She slaughtered her in a debate, and her reward was to be put on a secret TSA watch list. So they were spying on Tulsi Gabbard as well. But the president is, and I don't discuss my private conversations with the president, you know that, but I can tell you, however, having met with him, that he is very, very pleased with her performance. He's very proud of her. This is a courageous moment. These are not allegations. She has now produced the receipts, absolute stone cold proof that Barack Obama was the main orchestrator of a conspiracy that is the greatest single dirty trick in American political history. It is nothing less than an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the incredible capabilities of our intelligence agencies were utilized using two completely fake pieces of evidence, the so-called Steele dossier, paid for and contrived by Hillary Clinton and her campaign, and the false claim that the Democrat National Committee had been the target of an online hack by Russian intelligence, for which there is still not an iota of proof. So Barack Obama, actually surprisingly, after Tulsi Gabbard laid this at his feet, he put out a statement pointing to the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee report, which is a pay stub of every fraudulent, wild, unsubstantiated claim. I think most of them from the Huffington Post in a report. I went back and looked. Every single reference to me in this report, there's a few, is factually incorrect or taken out of context. Oh, Roger Stone communicated with the online persona of Guccifer II, and he was a Russian hacker. Well, A, there's no proof that he was a Russian hacker, but Alex, this happened 3 months after WikiLeaks had already published the DNC and Clinton material. So it's chronologically impossible for this communication to be inappropriate. I myself released the context. If you look at the content, it's innocuous.
Well, Roger, it's now established that you weren't a Russian agent and Trump wasn't and I wasn't. It was all made up. That's now admitted. But now we have Gabbard and her incredible statement today. We're going to play after you leave us in full. And it's in the news now that it was in the U.S. in real intelligence assessments, not the fake ones that they created and sent to Steele through MI6 to then release and then give to Hillary. And so Obama and Brennan and Clapper and Comey could play dumb. We now know that the Russians had the intel that Hillary, that you and I reported at the time, goes into rages, was on a bunch of tranquilizers and psychotropics, and was basically taking money from them, that they actually wanted Hillary Clinton because she was highly controllable despite all her anti-Russian rhetoric. There's now in the intelligence that Obama had at the time that the Russians knew, and that they were concerned that the Russians would release that, but basically it's inferred that they talked to the Russians, and in the intelligence they weren't going to release it. We're basically working with the DNC to protect Hillary Clinton. Just unbelievable.
No, Alex, you're absolutely right. The Russians knew that Hillary Clinton had numerous health problems, that she was using psychotropic drugs, she was using heavy tranquilizers, she was a heavy drinker, she had vascular problems. They put out a press release, Alex, attacking you and I for raising this very, very legitimate issue. I still have a copy of that release. We were absolutely right. Now we have the definitive proof of it. The left is trying to distract, of course. They are, first of all, saying, oh, well, a former president can't be prosecuted. Well, they tried to put Donald Trump, and they've tried to shoot and kill him. They tried to put him in prison. They tried to keep him off the ballot in all 50 states. They tried to bankrupt him. Why should Barack Obama not be held to the same standard? Although in the case of Trump, he actually hadn't done anything wrong. Here we have Barack Obama red-handed. I mean, we've got the goods thanks to the courage of Tulsi Gabbard. And I think there is a growing feeling here, although no one has told me this directly, that Attorney General Pam Bondi will do her duty under the law, and that this cabal will be brought to justice. We're talking about Obama, Biden, Rice, Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Rosenstein. This is a corrupt bunch, and they're all up to their necks in it, and it is now indisputably proven. And the Democrats they have three arguments. One, the Senate Intelligence Committee, that is a steaming pile of horseshit. It is completely contrived. Then this claim, well, we can't treat a former president that way. How did they treat Donald Trump? And then they say, well, this is all a distraction from the Epstein matter. So let's get into that, because I've said this right here on the Alex Jones Show last week. Now, a Florida judge, Robin Lee Rosenberg, who is an appointee of Barack Obama, refuses to release the grand jury testimony against Jeffrey Epstein in Florida in 2005 and 2007. Those are the documents that would begin to demonstrate who was in his pedophile network. It is a Democrat judge leading the cover-up. And now the Justice Department, consistent with the pledge of President Donald Trump, on the orders of Donald Trump, Attorney General Bondi has moved in federal court in New York to unseal the grand jury testimony and the search warrants in the 2019 indictment by the Trump Justice Department of Jeffrey Epstein. That will go in front of a judge, two judges who are Democrats. I'm predicting right now that they will follow their colleague in Florida and continue the cover-up. So Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, he was jumping up and down yesterday saying we must have full release, yet he sponsored legislation in the Senate to effectively block the release.
And Roger, let me stop you right there, because I was literally about to open my mouth 2 minutes ago when you went there. We were on the coup, the rolling coup, the long-term coup of Obama and the deep state, now all out in the open. And I was going to ask you next. We talked a week ago, and we're normally not holding our breath because we've seen such inaction. The Justice Department likes to protect itself no matter who's in power. But as Trump said yesterday, no, he gave Hillary a pass, but no more pass now. Whether it's bad or good, they're tyrants. It's got to be done. We're gonna indict them. So I want you to speak to that. But absolutely, you had Maureen Comey fired last week, running all these cover-up cases with Epstein, Diddy, Ghislaine Maxwell. She asked the judge to seal all the cases. She asked the judge not to release the little black book of John's. And now the judge, as you just said, denies Trump bid to unseal Jeffrey Epstein grand jury transcripts in Florida. So everywhere, it's not Trump covering up. And notice the Democrats, when they called for subpoenas, they only want something with Trump's name, as Speaker Johnson pointed out, as I've been pointing out for weeks. Obviously, they understand the Democrats have been in control of the file. They were hiding the file in New York. Bondi 5 months ago raided it. And it's not just they would take anything out that makes them look bad. They would then try to put, nothing in there with Trump raping kids, because that's not there, but anything embarrassing they could, any disinformation they could. And now Trump and his surrogates are being articulate. And all I was asking them to do was be articulate, because I could war game all this and see what was happening. And so it's good to see them finally getting their messaging right, because I've never seen any evidence of Epstein and any bad stuff with, Trump. And we see the Democrats over the years trying to cover it up, with Trump trying to release it. Then Trump suddenly learns the last few weeks, once they get the files, oh, there's some crap. He says, oh, it's Brennan, Comey, Clapper, which it was, in control. It's Russiagate again. He should have then elaborated, as Johnson did today, saying, look, they had it. God knows what they've stuck in it, but it should all be released. Just be ready for some more yellow, journalism garbage and red herrings here, Roger.
Well, Alex, I got to give you credit. You're the first one who really figured this out. We spoke the other night, and you pointed out that when Trump says it's a hoax, he's not saying that Epstein wasn't a child sex trafficker. He's not saying he wasn't a pedophile. What he's saying is that these documents have been in the control of the Southern District of New York. They have been under the control of the New York office of the FBI. These are hotbeds of Trump-hating leftist bureaucrats, prosecutors, and investigators. And they dropped this birthday card poison pill in there. So there's a high probability that these documents, which remain sealed, are salted with poison pens. A Jane Doe claim. This is hypothetical. A Jane Doe claim that, Donald Trump assaulted an underage girl. There is no evidence about that. Now, right now, I just saw that Nancy Pelosi sobered up long enough to put up a tweet that says the Wall Street Journal has evidence that shows that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. What does that mean? Everybody knows, I covered in my 2015 book. Yes, Trump was on his plane with his wife, Marla Maples, and his daughter, Tiffany Trump, and a nanny. And they flew from New York.
And there's photos of that. I said a couple weeks ago, if I was the enemy, they will bring up a bunch of old recycled stuff that was disproven in 2016 and on, but they know the public has amnesia, even in 6 months, much less 8 years. And exactly what I predicted is now happening, Roger.
No, it's true. And yet they want to ignore the real scandal here, which is after Epstein was charged with sex crimes in Florida, but before he pled guilty, Hillary Clinton took a $25,000 contribution from him. And after he was convicted, they continued to socialize with him. They continued to take millions of dollars from him. The seed capital for the Clinton Global Initiative, which was then called the Clinton Foundation, came from Jeffrey Epstein. Was Bill Clinton who was on the island. That's according to the...
And the same thing with Bill Gates. Even after he's convicted, still constantly hanging out with him, lying. His wife divorces him over it. And then we have at least 10 confirmed victims, 3 of which have now committed suicide or been killed, depending on how you look at it, that said, no, they never saw Trump at the island, never saw him with girls, never saw him anywhere. He never did anything wrong.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're trying to downplay the Clintons' involvement, and yet they make completely false claims against the president. I must tell you, in the larger scheme of things, Alex, this stunning news produced by Tulsi Gabbard with the assistance of Kash Patel and others has really changed the news cycle. People are focused on the greatest single dirty trick in American history.
It's treason. It's treason. It's a rolling long-term coup, as you said. But I want to be clear. As I said 17 days ago, when they put out that memo that I talked to the White House today, they said, no, that was, everybody signed on to that because they saw it as a distraction and they knew that they'd put poison pills in. They're like, how did you know that? I go, well, I could figure it out, I could reverse engineer it. And then I said, well, then why didn't you just shut up and then, have a special counsel or something, or just order everything released? Why come out and do that? My problem was with how ridiculous that was. But instead of not even talking about it, Trump should double down now and say, look, I've ordered this release and the Democrats don't want it released. They're fighting in New York. They're fighting in Florida not to release it. I want it all released. And I think you should put a special counsel in because, again, they were trying to bluster and do this bluff, which is now backfiring. Because as you said yourself, this whole Epstein thing goes right back to Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Obama, the Clintons. The Clintons, for God's sakes, that their deputy head of their foundation got convicted of human trafficking and kidnapped little kids out of Haiti. The Clintons stole 98% of the money, billions out of Haiti. They're the ones you can't stick in the dark. John Podesta and the WikiLeaks having 7, 8, 9-year-olds delivered to a hot tub in the middle of the woods for his, quote, entertainment. I mean, they're the ones that have this issue. And I think Trump should go whole hog into it and tie it all into Obama and the $56,000 of hot dogs being delivered. What do you think?
Well, I mean, look, he's doing that. I went back and looked. This was entertaining. I had to look at that famous interview with Leslie Stahl, where Trump says they spied on my campaign and they got caught. And she says, there's no proof of that. We're 60 Minutes. We can't just put unproven. No, Leslie, you're busted. First, you look a little long in the tooth, in all honesty. But you're completely and totally busted as a fraud. The evidence existed then, and it exists now. Trump is absolutely right. Judge Napolitano was right. They were spying on Trump's campaign, and they have been caught. Barack Obama right now is, I suspect, his sphincter is rather tight because he's in deep, deep trouble.
And I want to go back to that. Because you were getting into Crossfire Hurricane and how that's ongoing, and Matt Taibbi, which I've already predicted from my sources, obviously the spying was ongoing until pretty much Trump got into office again on January 20th of this year. Roger, we talked last week, and I said, look, my sources they're really mean to indict. And you're like, no, that's what I'm hearing. I think finally it's about to happen. And now you see Tulsi, you see Trump saying, no, we're done. It's happening. That's a good thing. A, but also B, that's going to make the deep state rally and really pull out some dirty tricks now. So we've got to be ready for that. But speak to that. And then, Obama, normally keeps his mouth shut. To have him surface and then have Tulsi with facts and documents slap him down. I mean, wow, finally the Trump administration's got some people with some balls.
Yeah, she came right back at him. So she made these stunning revelations. She released a trove of documents. He then denied everything, pointed to the Fugazi Senate Intelligence Committee report, which is a fraud. And she came back on the second day today with the release of additional documents. And my understanding is that she's going to release even more. So they're busted. They know they're busted. There's increasing hysteria on the left as they know that prosecution of Barack Obama is a real possibility. Maxine Waters says, anybody who thinks they're going to prosecute Barack Obama is going to have to come through me. I love that. Absolutely. If she wants to interfere with his arrest, she too should be subjected to arrest because that's illegal. It is. These people are in a full panic mode, Alex, and they should be. Meanwhile, in all honesty, the whole world does not revolve around either, certainly not the Epstein matter, nor about the Russian collusion hoax, although it is historically, I think, vitally important that these people be brought to justice. But you can see why the president is angry. For the first month in decades, the month of June, the United States actually ran a surplus. The tariff revenues are off the charts, $422 million in new revenues from tariffs.
Billion. You said million, billion.
Pardon me, billion. They said his tariff strategy would drive inflation rates high. Inflation is historically low. The dollar is sound. We have a record Dow Industrial Average. Unemployment remains low. I mean, the golden age.
The border is secured. The Trump is cornering the Bitcoin market, the crypto market.
Well, and then you also have innovation, housing, and the housing finance director, Bill Pulte, announcing that when you apply for a mortgage, you can use cryptocurrency as part of your assets to prove that you're credit worthy. You can use your past history of paying rent on time as part of your credit history and applying to
the only way to get out of a collapse and massive debt is innovation and cutting, and Trump is doing both. It's up to $15 trillion committed investment in just 6 months, $5 trillion reportedly now already flooded in. Trump is winning, and I talked to people. You're at the White House. I got a bunch of calls from them today, pretty high-level people. Sometimes people you're meeting with, like the president, and they said, listen, he's in there 14 hours a day just on trade. He's winning these deals. All these countries are signing over. He's battling each deal. Almost everybody's aligning with us. This has totally cut Russia and China out of the power structure. The EU is collapsing. If people just knew the reality of the economics, Trump is running the tables on the economy.
It's extraordinary, and therefore you can see why it aggravates him that all of this is a fake news media attempt to distract from his incredible accomplishments. But
it's right whenever, he's the big guy, but the real big guy. But it was right to say when he was just, blowing up at constituents and saying nothing to see here, and that stupid memo saying Epstein killed himself. Why do that? Have we found out who gave Trump the advice to put that memo out?
I have no idea whatsoever. No idea whatsoever. I disagree with it based on the examination of Epstein's body by the very respected pathologist, New York medical examiner, Dr. Michael Baden, who says the broken bones in his neck are completely inconsistent with hanging. Baden has done autopsies in over 1,000 hanging cases. He says he's never seen this before. But I'll tell you, Alex, the other thing the town is buzzing about, absolutely buzzing about, is the $2.5 billion renovation of the palatial headquarters of the Federal Reserve.
And the criminal referral of Jerome Powell for lying to Congress, saying nothing fancy was put in, no fountains, no marble. Well, then no private elevators? Where's the $2.5 billion gone then?
That's what Bill Pulte is asking, the head of the Federal Home Finance Agency. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who I met with this morning, she's got some bombshell revelations coming on the Kennedy assassination. Even more, she's been fighting tooth and nail with the CIA as they continue to fight to hold information back. But here's a little news, Alex. She has gotten the Kremlin, what was the KGB, the successor to the KGB, has agreed to hand over all of the files pertaining to Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination, which the Assassinations Review Board sought in the 90s, but the Russians would not hand over. Now, interesting, the last time this happened, as you know, my mentor, President Richard Nixon, rose to national prominence because he claimed that a high-level State Department executive, Alger Hiss, was a Russian communist spy, and Hiss would ultimately go to prison for perjury. But the American left they hated Nixon for this, and they insisted for decades that Hiss was innocent. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Soviet government, the Russian government, agreed to hand over the records pertaining to Alger Hiss, and guess what? He was a Russian spy. So now the Russians are handing over to Anna Paulina Luna all of what was then the KGB's records about Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination. You know what they found? They said that he was a terrible shot. They said that he was mentally unstable, and they believed that he would have been incapable of carrying anything remotely close to what happened to Jack Kennedy out. That's in those documents from what she tells me she's going to be releasing.
And they already just released, thanks to her and Trump, that indeed Oswald was under the control of CIA psychological warfare, information war operations, which we already knew. He was a propaganda tool. He was a patsy, as he said, before Jack Ruby killed him. Explain that, how big a deal that is.
It's a huge deal. For 6 decades, the CIA insisted that they had scant knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald. Director John McCone said it under oath to Congress. Deputy Director Dick Helms said, no, we don't know much about this guy. In fact, a CIA operative named George Joannides was essentially his handler. He was handling him under an alias. I think it was, I can't recall the name at the moment, Gebler, I think it was. He was monitoring all of his communications. He was directing his actions. He sets up the scuffle in the street in New Orleans, where Lee Harvey Oswald is handing out pro-Castro leaflets in an effort to position him as a communist, so he can be set up as the patsy. I pointed out the weird part is that the flyer he's handing out has on it in the Fair Play for Cuba Committee address. The address is actually that of FBI operative and informant Guy Bannister, who was also, I think, handling Oswald. When Oswald is arrested in New Orleans after that scuffle, they take him to jail. He has one phone call. Who does he call? His wife? His lawyer? No, he calls the head of the New Orleans branch of the FBI, and 45 minutes later, he's sprung. So they have been busted big time. They also know that Joanides was the guy who was the liaison for the CIA in the House Select Committee investigation in the late 70s, in which the CIA completely stonewalled the investigation. They turned over no documents. They provided no testimony. Those running the committee were largely experienced organized crime prosecutors and investigators, which is why they reached the correct conclusion that organized crime was involved in John Kennedy's murder. But they were not alone. They were just one of the conspirators, and they never touched on the role of the CIA. I think thanks to Anna Paulina Luna, with the assistance of Tulsi Gabbard, who's been pressuring the intelligence agencies to stop playing hide and seek with these documents and transcripts and videos, we're going to learn a lot more about Jack
Absolutely.
Kennedy.
Well, Roger, you've been very gracious with time. I want to hit just a few other things with you here, because we've kind of been all over the map, but it's all interconnected. Same deep state battle here. Going back now, we got documents from Sheriff Arpaio in early 2017 that key people, myself, Trump, you, others, had been surveilled, spied on before they called it Crossfire Hurricane. They knew Trump was planning to run. You were secretly advising him. He was openly criticizing Obama and where he came from and Kenya and all the rest of it. So they knew what was going on. They started targeting Trump. They targeted me. We got new documents this year from the FBI that it was ordered by Obama and Comey, 2013 National Security Investigation. It was a dragnet. The current deputy director of the FBI last year, Bongino, got a similar list that was ongoing in the first administration, where we were all on the list. Your name was on the list, my name on the list, along with 22 other people, including the president. So it's talk about our John Hancocks. I mean, we are listed by the bad guys as who they were coming after. But all the investigations, all the garbage, they could do a fake perjury on you, and Flynn, they had to drop that. But just total witch hunt. But at the time, you and I told Trump, here's the database. You're being spied on. We didn't know the name of the operation. And then CNN spun it when the New York Times and everybody had been reporting, oh, we have wiretaps proving Trump was working with the Russians. And we're like, no, you had wiretaps, but they didn't show any of that. You were spying on the campaign. Then they didn't mention that we brought the receipts. They just said we were completely making it up. First, I want to play Speaker Mike Johnson 2 weeks after I began to put this out, which is true. My own listeners go, wait, you're mad at Trump saying don't investigate this. You're not my constituent if you do it, because you're innocent. I've investigated it. They're going to recycle all this. I know you're pissed. You just want to move on. Can't do that. That was my advice. People now admit that's common sense. I was right. Trump's really good. He's great. But when he does something I think is destructive to himself and us, I am not in a cult. I care about him and our future together. God, we need him to succeed. I'm going to do it. Well, now Trump was kind of nebulous 8-9 days ago. Hey, they've had the file. It's just like, Russiagate, Brennan, Comey, Clapper. Yeah, they did have it. Then my listeners go, wait, first you say Trump's bad. Now you're defending him, coming up with this story. They control the file. Comey and his daughter, even when Trump was in, had it hidden in New York. Bondi and Patel had to go grab it, basically raid it 4, 5, or 6 months ago. So yeah, they did. That's a fact. And so you've got to wonder what they're going to put in there. Well, now they're saying, we'll get to this in a moment, secret recordings or other witnesses or affidavits or other women that claim Trump, guaranteed to be the Jane Does that turned out weren't even real, followed by law firms made up. So it wasn't hard to predict that if they'd done this in the buildup of 2016, trying to get women to say things, couldn't find them, so produce fake Jane Doe deals, that they're going to rerun that. E. Jean Carroll's just a woman that would actually come out and say it. And so it's not hard to predict this. They're going to recycle the same crap, as you know they always do. So here's Mike Johnson, and then back-to-back, a 2017 CNN report with Anderson Cooper with the operative of the New York Times, misrepresenting and saying we have no evidence, we just made it up, though we've now been totally vindicated. Here are the clips back-to-back, and Roger Stone of StoneZone.com will respond.
Quickly weigh in on Epstein. Many are hoping to see more of those files released. There could be future court proceedings. Is there any reason that you have to believe that any documents were tampered with by so-called deep state operatives?
Look, it hasn't been my area that I've worked on. Unfortunately, I wish I knew more about it. It's been in the Department of Justice. One of our concerns is, of course, that it was held in the hands of the DOJ leaders under the last administration, the Biden-Harris administration. And we all know how crooked and corrupt so many of those top officials were, how they engaged in lawfare against President Trump. And he has a concern, and I do as well, that things could have been doctored in those records. So that's part of the concern. But I'm for full transparency. We all are. Maximum transparency. The president is as well. There's no daylight between him and the Republicans in Congress. And we'll continue to advocate for that, to let the people see the records and draw the whatever conclusions they will.
So we're very glad we happen to have the reporter who wrote the story that is being quoted now by Sean Spicer. I want to get your reaction to what we just heard. What do you make of the White House citing your article as part of the evidence?
I mean, it's getting bizarre at this point, because we've said it very clearly, and I said on your show, that that's not what the story said. Anybody can read the story and see that's not what it said. And so there's this bizarre circular thing happening where the president cites a theory that he was wiretapped, which developed on the kind of fringe right-wing media. And then after his tweet storm, Infowars then started saying, well, look, it was the New York Times that reported it, citing our story, misreading our story. And now, a few weeks later, the White House and the president are citing Infowars. So they've got one kind of bizarre right-wing fringe theory to defend another bizarre right-wing fringe theory, both of which there's no evidence to support.
And just to be clear here, there is, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's absolutely nothing whatsoever in your reporting in the New York Times that indicates President Obama wiretapped or ordered wiretapping of then candidate Trump, correct?
Nothing. I mean, if we knew that, that is a fantastic story. That we would be rushing it. I would not be sitting here with you. I'd be at home writing it or out reporting it. We said that there were intercepted communications. In subsequent reporting, we've said that these communications were Russians talking to each other about contacts with Trump associates. We know that there were intercepts with, say, the Russian ambassador, who was on the phone with Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor. And so Flynn was picked up because he was talking to the Russian ambassador, who's under surveillance. But this is all routine work by intelligence agencies and the FBI. This isn't, they specially put the Trump people under surveillance. We have no evidence that happened.
Of course, we had the NSA documents. They just ignored that. And at the same time they're doing this in early 2017 on CNN, they're all over the news saying wiretaps prove he's a Russian agent. We have 10-minute, 20-minute compilations of them saying it. It went on for the last 8 years, Roger. They tried it in the last election. So they really think we're stupid. Roger, what do you say to this?
Well, first of all, Alex, I don't get my news from CNN for the same reason I don't drink out of the toilet. And Anderson Cooper, longtime CIA operative, why would we believe anything he says? And as far as Mr. Rosenberg is concerned, yeah, General Flynn, after he was appointed National Security Advisor, did have conversations with the Russian ambassador, as did Susan Rice after she was appointed National Security Advisor, before she was sworn in, had conversations with the Russian ambassador. Nothing improper or illegal about that. They tried to claim that Flynn had talked about lifting sanctions. That was a lie. General Flynn did nothing whatsoever wrong. But this is the New York Times. They're not credible. They need to give their Pulitzer Prizes back. Virtually everything they've written about the Russian collusion thing is false. Matt Rosenberg is a con man. He's a fraudster. He's not a journalist. He's a propagandist. And as far as calling the Infowars fringe, no, it's the New York Times that is a fringe outlet. All the news that's fit to print, embellished with a left-wing tint.
Well, what does it feel like? Because other than Trump, you're the second most demonized person as a Russian agent with no evidence, obviously preposterous. How vindicated do you feel now? And, I heard Flynn was asked something that he said, I don't feel vindicated. I want arrest. I mean, this was a coup against America.
Well, I feel vindicated, but in all honesty, the people who tried to destroy me and my family, the people who tried to destroy General Flynn and his great family, having dinner with one of his brothers tonight, Joe Flynn's a great patriot. Yes, we'd like to see a recalibration of the scales of justice in this country, in which these people fabricated evidence, they fabricated a crime in an effort to destroy us. Most people understand that I was prosecuted not because I did something wrong, but because they were trying to pressure me into testifying falsely against Donald Trump, and I wouldn't do it. But Barack Obama and his entire criminal retinue need to be held accountable. I'm growingly confident that that's going to happen. I want to stress the president has not told me anything that he hasn't said in public. I think he's hopeful that the attorney general will follow the law and prosecute, which I think is now warranted. There's now more than enough evidence, and they can continue to try to distract babbling about Epstein when they're the ones covering up Epstein. First by a Democrat judge in Florida, soon to be covered up by a Democrat judge in New York. If you go back
and by the way, you were on last week predicting they will cover it up. It's now happened in Florida. Judge trying to block Trump, who wants the Epstein files released right here.
Yeah, it is step one. And I predict the New York judges will do the same thing. So on the one hand, they keep screaming for more public disclosure, but then their agents make sure that doesn't happen. There are no Republicans on that island. I covered this very extensively in my book. You can go to that book, by the way, EpsteinTruthBook.com, EpsteinTruthBook.com, The Clintons' War on Women, longest chapter in the book, Orgy Island, Chapter 7. I interviewed Virginia Roberts Giuffre for 6 hours. I reported on her sworn testimony. This is a willful distraction from the fact that these people are now busted in the crime of the century, which is the
exactly,
Russian.
And that's why I got upset when Trump figured out they'd spike some embarrassing, made up BS again and recycled. He got mad and says, "Just trust me, move on." No. Now they're doing the right thing. They demand its release. The Democrats are trying to block it, and now I think Trump should come out and point this out. RogerStoneZone.com, and I got some big meetings coming up tomorrow. You've promised to join me at 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern, because you've got a lot of big stuff going on. And look, you don't toot your own horn, but I talked to a lot of people, and I was talking to you, it wasn't a week ago, it was actually 2 weeks ago. You said, no, finally, look at the tea leaves. It looks like they are going to indict him because everybody knows this is a deep state. They're going to destroy the country. And Trump basically said in a press conference yesterday, he said, look, I gave Hillary a pass. She's a woman, whatever. No more. None of you are getting a pass. We're going to do this. You're getting, you're going to get indicted. I mean, it has to happen, Roger.
I completely agree. Alex, let me remind your viewers and listeners that you can listen to my show, The Stone Zone, my syndicated radio show, every night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time at WABCRadio.com. Tune into The Stone Zone. We're going to be talking about a lot of these things tonight.
All right, Roger. Thank you so much for the time. StoneZone.com. Thank you.
God bless you, Alex.